Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Unless you've been living under a rock, you already know EA has been purchased in a massive buyout. So first up in this video, I'm going to go ahead and give you the general details about how this buyout is going to work. And then I'm going to walk through what are seen as some of the positive and negative aspects of this purchase. And then finally, I'm going to give you some of my general thoughts regarding the future. And I don't want to waste any time. Let's just go ahead and get right into it. So first and foremost, EA has been bought for $55 billion. This is the largest leverage buyout in history. So of course, it's gotten a lot of attention in outlets that usually do not bother to cover games. Now, who has made this purchase? Well, the largest groups that are involved is a company called Silver Lake Management. And then there's also Affinity Partners, which is owned by Jared Kushner. And then finally, there's Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. Now, let me say up front, because I see a lot of people commenting on this as if now all of a sudden Saudi Arabia is involved with EA. But Saudi Arabia already had a significant stake in EA even before this deal. So this is not like it's new from the standpoint of now potentially if this deal goes through, Saudi Arabia would have a significant stake in a private company. But as far as them being involved with EA and having money in EA, that already was the case. Now, some of you who have purchased stock from EA might be thinking, hey, I didn't think it was considered to be a $55 billion company. And you would be correct. The company is being purchased at a 25% premium to convince the shareholders that this is actually a good deal, because otherwise the shareholders could come together and essentially stop the buyout. So they're basically throwing a bucket full of money at them and saying, hey, there's no way you should turn this down. Now, this also means if the buyout goes through, the stock price is going to skyrocket to $210 per share. So anyone who had a significant amount of stock in EA stands to absolutely gain a massive windfall. If you go to look at the stock price right now, you'll probably see that it's not at $210 per share. And that's because there is some risk that this deal will not go through. It still has to pass regulatory inspection and a couple of other things. And so there's a little bit of hesitation as to whether or not this is going to happen. But at the end of the day, Jared Kushner is directly involved, which almost certainly means Trump is a massive fan of this deal. And it's very, very hard to see any American regulatory body trying to stand in the way and keep this deal from going forward. Now, as part of this deal, there is a bill for about $20 billion in debt that has to be paid. Who is going to hold this debt? JP Morgan Chase, which essentially means that once the buyout is completed, EA is going to have to pay back Chase this $20 billion. And let's be clear, this debt is completely on EA. So you've got all these different groups who have decided to purchase EA and are going to generate a bunch of profits from what EA does. But all of the risk and all the debt is actually saddled with EA as a company. That $20 billion is the largest debt commitment buyout in history. And I think it's interesting to note that Ubisoft almost certainly wants to do something similar. So it'll be interesting to see if the success that EA has had with this gives the partners that Ubisoft has been talking with a little more confidence to go ahead and pull the trigger. Now, That's all the general details that I have regarding this sale. There's a bunch more information to look at, so I will leave 1 or 2 links in the description so you can go ahead and read about some of this stuff on your own. But now let's get into some of the positives and negatives regarding this deal. So first, what is the positive? And believe it or not, there are positives, at least technically, for gamers. Of course, we have no idea what EA actually wants to do moving forward, but it's possible this could turn out to be a good thing for those of us who like games. So first and foremost, EA will no longer have to provide quarterly reports. So part of being a publicly traded company means that every quarter you have to give a report to your shareholders. And in each report, you need to prove that you are doing everything in your power to squeeze the maximum amount of profits that you can for them. And if you can't do that, that's how you end up losing your job, getting sued, etc., etc. This is part of what Sven Vick was talking about during the Game Awards, where he feels like these corporations are making these terrible decisions on behalf of profit that end up destroying developers because they don't have long-term vision. Now, part of this absolutely is because of the short-sightedness of people, right? But another legitimate part is they're not really in a space where it's possible to have long-term vision, because every single quarter you have got to convince shareholders that you're doing everything in your power to generate money right here, right now. With EA becoming a private corporation, all of that goes away. And instead of thousands or even millions of shareholders that you're accountable to on a quarterly basis, you're instead accountable to a few representatives, and the reports that you provide to them do not have to be made public. So it totally changes the landscape of what's possible from a planning and vision standpoint. And this could conceivably result in EA taking a little bit more risk, doing games that maybe they wouldn't have done previously, things of that nature, all of which, of course, could be very beneficial to customers. Loot boxes could potentially change significantly based on this deal, because Saudi Arabia is a big player here and they have strong rules against gambling. Again, they also had investment in EA before this, but they didn't really have the same voice that they will most likely have now to kind of direct and guide potentially what EA does. And so the laws that Saudi Arabia has regarding what is and is not acceptable from a gambling standpoint might impact how EA handles loot boxes and some of the other monetization mechanics that many gamers have come to despise. I also personally feel like if EA goes private, it is much more possible and perhaps even likely that some of the IPs we really don't want in their hands anymore end up getting sold off. A lot of us believe that Dragon Age is dead. Well, if they're a private company trying to figure out how they're going to pay back $20 billion in debt, they are much less likely to be okay with an IP just sitting around doing nothing that they know they want to do nothing with, when instead they could potentially sell it and get some money that'll potentially help them put something down on this debt. Now, of course, there's not a whole lot of developers or publishers who will be willing to put up the number that'll make it at least interesting for EA to sell those IPs, but I still think it's more likely in that situation than it is right now, and I see that as a positive. Another thing to consider is it's not really clear to anybody why these entities have decided EA should be worth $55 billion. Like, when most people look at it, they're like, there's no way EA is worth that amount. They're probably not even going to be able to pay that debt back. There's nothing that we can see that explains why this is a great profitable deal. And yet at the same time, the folks involved in this deal are not idiots. Like Jared Kushner has been very, very successful with his affinity partner. Saudi Arabia has been making incredible deals that have been been extremely lucrative for them. These are not people who are known for just throwing money into black holes. So there's something going on that obviously makes a $55 billion deal profitable, which brings up, what does EA have going on, or what are they planning that maybe we're not aware of that is all of a sudden going to make this deal make more sense? That's potentially very exciting for those of us who are gamers, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. Those are all the positive things that I get out of this deal. So let's go ahead and talk about some negative ones. First and foremost, what is EA going to do in order to be able to pay back this debt and make this deal profitable for those who have put their money up? Well, an obvious option is to downsize. And I know a lot of fans of Mass Effect are extremely worried that what's left of BioWare is going to absolutely get shredded, and EA is going to just shut it all down to try to generate some more profit for themselves. I'm honestly not really worried about it. I feel like if they really were planning to do that, they probably already would have done it, and they want to at least see what happens with Mass Effect 5. But again, you're talking to someone who has no faith in Mass Effect 5 whatsoever. So I'm not really excited about it at all. I'm not emotional about it the way some other people are. So I totally understand for those of you who are really, really invested in seeing another Mass Effect game why you're worried. But frankly, I feel like all employees under EA, regardless of what game you're working on, should probably be concerned, especially if EA starts pushing more towards AI, and that games can be created with AI, and maybe we don't even really need devs to create games that people are going to enjoy. All of this kind of points to they want to shred as much of the workforce as possible. This deal is definitely not good for the devs who are actually doing the work. Another thing that you of course have to consider is what sort of monetization strategies is EA going to put in place? Yeah, sure, it's possible that Saudi Arabia's rules regarding gambling are going to cause EA to change some of its monetization policies and potentially make these things better for players, but it's also absolutely possible that Saudi Arabia takes a very hands-off approach to this deal and just lets EA do what they want to do, and instead monetization policies become significantly worse, and they try to squeeze every single cent they can out of players in order to get as much money as humanly possible. To be honest with you, I think that option is much more likely to happen, and I fully expect they are at least going to try to see if they can release things that are even more draconian than what they've done before. Another massive negative is Saudi Arabia's involvement in this deal overall. Of course, one more time, I'm going to say they already had an investment in EA, so this is not completely new. But again, they're now owning it as a private company, and it's one more thing in a stack of things that Saudi Arabia has done to try to kind of rehabilitate its image and be seen as this cultural power and someone who's a major player in sports and culture and things of that nature. So from buying EA to getting, there's been a major investment in esports. They did the Live Golf League that attracted a bunch of different golf players. They've been trying to put on major comedy tours, drawing a lot of American comedians. There's a lot happening in Saudi Arabia that is all about them trying to rehabilitate their image, because frankly, a lot of people, when they hear Saudi Arabia, they think about human rights abuses and murdered journalists. But also on top of that, they're trying to diversify their money away from oil. Saudi Arabia, of course, has been known for oil exports, and they can see the writing on the wall. Everything has been about getting green energy, clean energy, electric cars, all that kind of stuff. So oil is just not going to be the big cash boon that it has been previously. And so they're trying to figure out how to put their hands in other pots to ensure they continue to see the amount of financial success that they have experienced for the past 100 years. And just being straight up, a lot of people see all of this as a negative, as Saudi Arabia, again, trying to whitewash its image and its reputation, when in truth it's been involved in some really horrible things. I already mentioned the murdering of journalists. 15 of the 19 terrorists involved in 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia. I mean, I could go on, but you all probably already know some of these stories. Saudi Arabia has a very well-earned negative reputation, and there are many people who believe that Saudi Arabia being involved in a deal like this is a major national security concern, because you're putting them in a situation where they're going to have some level of control or be able to dictate products that are marketed to millions of Americans, and many of them kids. What is that going to look like? What are the types of things that are going to be put into these games that, again, might help to make Saudi Arabia seem like someone who are the good guys and we're all together and yada, yada, yada. And so all of that, of course, has folks concerned. All right, with all of that, you have the general details regarding this purchase and the positives and negatives that I see coming out of this whole situation. But final thoughts. Where do I stand on this? It's a terrible deal. In my opinion, it's a terrible deal for just about everybody except the folks who have decided to make a purchase. I think it's a terrible deal for the devs who are working for EA. They are going to be laid off, fired, whatever. I don't think any of their jobs are safe. I think it's terrible for EA as a company, as an entity, because it is not going to be able to handle this debt. I do not believe whatever they have in the pipeline is going to be strong enough to make up for them being overvalued at 25%. I don't think that's happening at all. So I personally, it's not going to happen quickly. Might be 5 years, might be 10 years, but I think this is the beginning of the end. I don't think they're going to be able to handle this. So the only people who are going to really benefit are the folks up top, like the CEO and all them, who are going to get a complete windfall based on that stock price. And of course, Saudi Arabia, Jared Kushner, etc., when they get their money and their piece of the pie as well. I think everybody else is about to get screwed over. And it's very, very unfortunate. For me, I'm not emotionally invested. Again, I don't have any faith in what BioWare is doing. I don't have any faith in Mass Effect 5. And I don't care about anything else EA does. I don't play Madden. I don't play FIFA. I don't really care about any of those games. But I do care about the devs. And of course, I care about the gamers who are invested in those games. And I feel like all of them are about to get massively screwed. I think we're going to have a period of major new monetization policies where EA attempts to squeeze as much money as it can out of these players to cover this debt and what it owes. And then when that fails, they're going to start shredding everything and everything will go under. Apologize for those of you who watch my channel on a regular basis. You know I'm usually not this pessimistic, but I always also keep it a band. I don't see this going in a positive direction at all. That doesn't necessarily mean, to be clear though, because this again, we care about BioWare the most. I still feel like we're going to see Mass Effect 5. I still believe we're going to get that game. It will release. Who knows what state it'll be in? Who knows if it'll actually live up to the original trilogy? But I do believe we are at least at some point going to see what Gamble is working on. So unlike some other people, I'm not really concerned about that, because again, I think if EA wanted to offload that, if they had lost faith in that, they would have just axed them with the Dragon Age people, but they specifically didn't do that. So we're all in a wait and see time. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments how you all feel about the deal. What are your perspectives? Did you agree or disagree with anything that I said? Looking forward to hearing your feedback. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button. We'll definitely appreciate it. And there are links down below if you want to join as a member or join up on my Patreon. More CRPG content coming to you all soon. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.